The Dow Industrial is expected to open up about 20 points. All those stories coming up this morning. And with me this morning on the program, Fox Business Network's Dagan McDowell, Rhino Trading Partners Michael Block, and Fox News contributor Katherine Timpf. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. Yes. Thanks for joining us with the 3 hours, Kat. We've got a can't-miss lineup this morning. 1-800-Flowers CEO Jim McCann is with us ahead of Mother's Day next Sunday. Supermodel turned entrepreneur Kathy Ireland on small business, and Donald Trump presidential campaign national spokesperson Katrina Pearson with us. Former White House Deputy Chief of Staff Karl Rove also stopping by this morning, and Breeders' Cup CEO Craig Fravel. You don't want to miss a moment of it, so do stay with us ahead for a busy program this Monday morning. Want to kick it off with the campaign trail and our top story right now. More bad news for Ted Cruz and the Never Trump movement. New polls show that Donald Trump with a double-digit lead over his rivals in the winner-take-all state of Indiana. Trump gets support from 49% of likely Republican primary voters. And that's followed by Cruz at 34% and John Kasich at 13%. On the other side of the aisle, Hillary Clinton leads Senator Bernie Sanders by just 4 points in the Hoosier state, a statistical tie with Sanders considering the margin of error. Tomorrow's primary is a do or die for Sanders and for Cruz. Both candidates still far behind in the national delegate race. Donald Trump holding his commanding lead as he looks to secure the 57 Republican delegates that are up for grabs in Indiana tomorrow. That would put him closer to the 1,237 number he needs to secure the party's nomination. Hillary Clinton, meanwhile, she's aiming to capitalize on her momentum following major victories in New York and Pennsylvania. The former Secretary of State leads rival Bernie Sanders by a significant margin, even without those all-important superdelegates today. Joining me now is Democratic strategist Lisa Smith, along with Republican strategist Tony Sayegh. Good to see you both.
Good to see you,
Thank you so much for joining us. So Indiana's real important for Trump, but it's critical for Cruz, Tony.
Yeah, it's his only roadway to preventing Donald Trump from getting 1237 outright. And I think you could see it because Cruz has invested a lot of resources there, spent the entire week there, made his announcement of a VP pick there in Indiana. You saw him yesterday on Fox News Sunday, completely targeting most of his conversation toward Indiana, the manufacturing jobs, Carrier, which is a big company, obviously, that shut down its factory and left Indiana. So for Cruz, it's the most essential state yet. And he does have a shot, if he wins Indiana, to make up ground in California, where you have a very active grassroots conservative movement there that he's going to get the support of. But if Trump wins Indiana, it's a very difficult roadway for Cruz to push it to a second ballot in the convention.
Also a difficult roadway for Sanders if Hillary wins this, and that's what everybody's expecting.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the difference is between Cruz and Sanders is that Sanders sees the writing on the wall, and you see him transitioning away from running against Hillary to trying to get concessions at the Democratic convention. But going back to Cruz, I mean, he walked into Indiana, I think, with a lot of swagger. You know, he had the announcement with kind of threw some Hail Marys last week with the announcement of Fiorina.
And then the governor.
Pence.
Right, but I mean, Pence's endorsement read like it was written at gunpoint. So,
if that was an endorsement,
I know.
I don't want the endorsement.
Right, it was the saddest endorsement. And then you see this.
He endorsed him, but he also said really nice things about Donald Trump.
Right,
yes.
He didn't really endorse him. He didn't say I want the people of Indiana to vote for Ted Cruz.
Right.
He said I'm going to vote for him, but Donald Trump has some really great things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah, he
this
doesn't want
is
to cross
the 13-year-old
Trump.
girl who wants everybody to like her.
Yeah,
right? Middle
Trump's
school.
going to crush Indiana and California, I think. In California, it's so interesting. He says that he thinks Carly Fiorina is going to help him in California. Also, she lost really bad, and then she left when she ran for office in California. So I don't understand that at all. I don't understand it.
But you don't think she's going to resonate in California?
I don't think so at all. I really, really don't. I mean, she wasn't popular when she was there, and she left.
And
It's funny that we're talking so much, though, about the Pence endorsement, because I do agree with the consensus here. The first 30 seconds sounded almost like an infomercial for Donald Trump. But it's kind of reflective, actually, of the larger Republican opinion right now, which is kind of consoling themselves into accepting Donald Trump, right? The fifth stage of grief is acceptance. So the more he appears, Trump that is, to be inevitable, the more you're seeing Republicans and conservatives beginning to try to get their arms around that notion and rally behind it.
And if you want a silver-haired Hoosier in your corner, you want Bobby Knight over Mike Pence. I would argue, and that's who Trump got. And in terms of swagger, Cruz might have been trying to swagger into Indiana, but because of Trump's wins in the Northeast, he had so much psychological momentum. That's really where a lot of this support is coming from, and it's hard to take that away from him.
Yeah, that's true. But Ted Cruz has been spending a lot of time in Indiana. That's where he's been, back and forth the last couple of weeks. He thought that he had this wrapped up. So
this poll should have gone. This Wall Street Journal mayor's poll should have gone in the other direction, right? And it widened the lead.
And what have we learned in the last 2 weeks of contest? Donald Trump has overperformed the polls by more than 10 points.
Right.
Keep that in mind.
No, and I totally agree. And I think going into California especially, it's a really troubling sign for Cruz. I think if he loses Indiana, that it's game over.
Yeah. I don't know. Nobody's going to admit the game's over even when it's over.
No, they're not going to admit it until at least the convention and the possibility of it being contested. How about this? Donald Trump returning to the Ted Cruz birther issue over the weekend. The presidential candidate responded to a speech given by the Texas senator's wife where she addressed Cruz's heritage. Listen.
Heidi Cruz, who's a very nice woman, said, my husband was an immigrant. Oh, it became a big story. Because I've been saying that. I say he's an immigrant, therefore he can't run for president.
I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, Heidi Cruz is out there saying, she's talking about getting the Hispanic vote. My husband is an immigrant. He's Hispanic.
Oh my God.
Trump's all over it. I told you, he's from Canada. Yeah, he's an immigrant.
If I were advising Donald Trump, I would give him two pieces of advice. Do not talk about women. Do not talk about immigrants. I mean, his approval numbers with Hispanics right now is 15%. With women, it's, I think, 20%. And if you compare that to Mitt Romney, who just got killed in those categories and demographics in 2012, he is so far behind, and it's just really hard to see him.
I know. I thought that was funny, to be honest. I thought it was funny, especially because Canada. He's from Canada.
Right.
Is that a voting block that we actually measure? Like, what do people from Canada want? What do the Canadians say about who I should vote for? I mean, what was happening with that?
Look, so long as he keeps it as a joke or a play on words, that's fine. My fear sometimes is Donald Trump takes like a laugh line one step too far. And I agree with you, Liz, in this regard. He has to find a way to be able to just talk to women and understand that his unfavorability creates this barrier. So it has to be done in a much more savvy way than making jokes about a candidate's wife, which he's done before, unfortunately.
But in terms of the humor, after watching the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Kat and I were on the live Gutfeld show on Saturday night. I thought, because the president's pretty good at delivering lines, but how refreshing. People try to make the Trump-Reagan comparison. Reagan was great at telling jokes and had an amazing sense of humor. That's one of the reasons people like Donald Trump. He might take it one step too far, but the guy is entertaining and funny.
He makes you laugh.
He really does. That made me laugh.
Really, it did. Great conversation. Liz Smith, good to see you.
Yeah,
thanks so much for joining us. Tony Sayegh, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Maria.
Come back soon. Make sure to tune in to Fox Business Network tomorrow night for our special coverage of the Indiana primaries. That's tomorrow, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Fox Business Network. Join us. Coming up next, at least 5 police officers have been injured as May Day protesting turns violent in Seattle. The startling images next, and then an incredible race at Talladega Super Speedway. Several crashes had some up in arms while one driver called it the worst crash of their career. And then the first cruise ship set sail for Cuba from the U.S. in more than half a century. Take a look at a history on the high seas after this break. Back in a moment.